Yeah, I'm Jackson. I have zero experience with carpentry.
I studied at a school for historic preservation in Boston and learned about how things were built, 250 years ago.
There's a long way to go. I'm nowhere near the top. Not that I thought I was, but there's so much more to do out there.
Welcome back to the Passion for Craft podcast. We are here doing a recap of a mini grand tour that's happened. Not with all of us, not even with two of us, but with one of us. Go ahead.
No
He
one
left
was
us
invited. So I went to Ireland for 7 days. It was a classical architecture and golf event, and
In North Ireland.
and the one of the points is that guys will take these golfing trips to Scotland, England, and Ireland, and they'll spend 8 days and play 10 rounds of golf, and just sometimes 36 in a day, sometimes even more than that if they're young and they can do it, and so they're just intense. I wanted to do one that was a little bit more less intense, and so 3 days of golf, and then the other days touring architecture. So what you're going to see is some pictures, and the point of this episode is, one, to encourage everybody to travel and to encourage everybody that to be a master builder, in my opinion, you have to travel. Okay?
That's what all previous master builders had done.
Well, Samuel McIntyre didn't, but most did. It's crazy how important it is and the inspiration that you can gain and learn from it. And so we're going to look at some of these pictures, and I guess there's kind of three lessons that I want people to go away from. One, travel. Second is travel. Third is travel. But travel is a big deal in going and finding inspiration in other places and going and seeing the way other people built. Two, how it reminded me how powerful architecture is as a medium to communicate what a society believes. It expresses the challenges and heartaches and values of that culture. And then there's a third one in there. I'll remember it when we get going. So we're looking at some houses, and this is a place called Churchill. And this very simple house. Okay.
Did they name it after your dog?
They did not.
Okay.
And so, but you'll notice that that it's kind of weird in the sense that you've got this very elevated door with the beautiful fan light, but there's no cornice. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's no eave. It's just the brick and stucco right up to the roof line. Whereas in a traditional house, you'd have this real entablature that would run around the outside. You might have more architectural embellishments, might have columns on the front supporting a pedimented porch. But that's kind of what the deal is. Ireland, as I discovered, was a little bit like America, kind of settled by the British. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was a wild land. It was crazy. And there was a strong Catholic influence early on. And so, Britain starts to take over certain areas, and there's a war. I won't get into too much of it, but basically there's about 100 years of peace between the Battle of the Boyne in 1690 and the late or early 1800s. The potato famine happens in 1845, where 2 million people in the country go away, and there are strong. We know if you said to someone, what's the political situation in Ireland, you'd think about the Catholics and the Protestants and the fighting that was going on in Northern Ireland and in Belfast and things like that. All of that, right? The fact that it was settled later, kind of at the same time as America was, dictates that the kind of architecture is Georgian, neoclassical, and Gothic. But they're also a place that didn't have a lot of money, okay? So we're going to see in these things that you either have very old things with castles, okay? You have newer things that there's something always just not quite right about them, and then you'll see this mix of different styles and details and stuff. So, front door, I think it's beautiful, well proportioned. Look at that drip roll. And I got a picture of it. I think that thing sticks out about 4 inches. Okay.
And how is that attached on the face?
It looks like it's just screwed.
from
Did
the
they
back.
have to like?
No, from the front through the top.
Okay.
Did they have to
'Cause you-
bevel it off to the side?
Yes, they
that
did.
the door could
So
close?
the door could close. But you basically we incorporate drip molds into our things because. Can you zoom in on that? Because drip molds matter. Okay. There's something we discovered when we looked at historic things, and I was amazed that over and over again I saw these massive drip molds on these doors. Remember the face of that house, sitting there completely exposed. It rains a lot in Ireland, so the drip mold is a real powerful, important thing.
In Orland.
So the other thing is that because things were classically done, classically made, classically put together, you have all these. You'll have this organization. Now this is a rounded room, and you're going to see through the fourth pane up this little building that way down the distance, and that's on center axis. That you go and look at the next slide.
That is crazy.
That thing is set up. So when they organized their houses, right, they said, we need this folly, which is what that's called. When you build this kind of a whimsical, fun building, that's maybe it's a bridge, maybe it's a temple, maybe it's something else, but it's called a folly. It's an architectural folly that organizes and connects the land. Okay, so what they're doing is they're drawing you outside with this. They are helping you. They're creating this. They're creating a mood. They're creating and classical people of this era went to great lengths in order to create these follies, and that one was organized so that the reflection of the pond reflected the building behind it, and then when you're down there, the pond reflects off, and you see the house when you're looking up at it. So
That is so cool.
very carefully calculated, very carefully done. Again, it's an old way of building that you're like, oh. And as we talk to clients and that have expansive properties, we're always like, this is something that was done, classical, organization of the land and how to put this together. Great deal of effort to make that happen. Also part of this property, the thatch roofing. Okay, that's a thatch roof. Thatch roofs are made from reeding. Actually, they're cutting reeds from from a bog or from somewhere else, and that roof sticks out. A foot and a half, but the way it's organized and that traditional detailing at the top, and because it rains so much in Ireland, that's about a 20-year roof, and they have to get on a waiting list to get the guy to come do that, and it's going to take a year and a half for that guy to even put you on his schedule so that you can do it when it's ready.
He's just bad at scheduling.
Now, other environments that don't have as much rain, a thatch roof, it lasts much longer than that.
Talk me through this. How does the thatch roof prevent water? What's going on there? Because are they putting mud and stuff inside of it too, or how does it work?
So, a thatch roof basically is a pile of
Thatch
reeds, right? That are, see that, what is that, a foot and a half, almost 2 feet thick. So that roof is very.
Oh, so you're saying it sticks? It's like reed,
it's
all the way out to a foot and a half.
It's built out about a foot and a half.
I did not realize
so that. Rain coming through there is obviously dripping down.
It naturally wants to follow the reeds down.
because of that pitch, and I don't know what the underlayment is underneath that and how they get to do it, but it's a roof that breathes. Okay, it's a roof that air moves through it. You've got these hollow reeds, and so it's a roof that dries out, and so. But the term, raining cats and dogs and things like that, my understanding is it came from thatch roofs where the cats and the dogs would actually burrow up inside a thatch roof, and it rained a lot and they would come out. So
That's crazy.
That's cool.
I don't know if that's a true thing, but that was where I was told that's where that term comes from.
Seems like it would, if there was a fire, it would go fast.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. So this is the inside of that little cottage. I wanted to show you just to my eye, what I'm picking up is the plank door, is the backing of that little kitchenette with the tongue and groove boards, that farm sink, The way they did the curtains underneath there, right? The
What's
display,
with the pillar coming through the roof?
display of the dishes. That's a finial, okay, coming down from the stair rail of the thing that's above.
Is it to hang their chandelier on, or what's the?
No, I mean it was part of that timber construction.
They just didn't cut it off, basically.
They just didn't cut it off. But go to the next picture. Look at that. Okay, so that is a wood rim lock. Okay, and so I've took a bunch of pictures of wood rim lock doors, and that looks like fur. But basically, you have an open face lock that has a wood cover over top of it, and then that iron strapping. And so this is just, look at the door handle, look at the key, that oval shape in that door handle. These are all subtle, small things that when I look at that, I go, what an interesting doorknob. Or wouldn't that be cool to do a wooden rim lock on some of our projects?
Yeah.
And you think about how to build that, and you're gaining inspiration. This is a perfect example of some inspiration I would show to my client if they're trying to do something rustic or medieval or farmhouse. Say, hey, here's would be a fun thing to do.
Have you ever seen that before this trip?
I had in some sewn books. There's some architectural hardware books.
By a guy named Sonn.
Sonn, and he has some drawings. It's all sketches, but he has some drawings of some wood rim locks. They're not very common in America. I saw probably 5 of them when I was in Ireland.
Do you think that's because people in America have just cast them typically? Because we have doors like that in Canada. I assume similar mechanisms, just has a metal housing on it.
Correct. We have a rim lock that has
it's not a wood rim lock,
right?
It's a rim lock.
Yeah. So the guts inside this are all metal, but the cover is wood.
Right.
And so,
or do you think that was a design, like they elevated it with the wood, or do you think there were?
No, I think that it's a we bridged that gap pretty quickly between open face locks and closed box locks, and so they didn't do it as fast. It doesn't appear, and they had a longer gap in there, but they didn't have the ironwork to go over top of it, and you see more wood covers.
That's cool.
So this was the most architecturally significant house in Ireland. Okay. Now, why is that house the most architecturally significant?
Yes. Is it the person?
Because it has a bunch of Lucky Charms.
It is a...
it's charming.
One is...
probably also Loki.
I'm kind of stuttering and stopping because it's a whole bunch of different things. One, here's an example of a fairly sophisticated house. Notice you've got the cornice at the top, you've got coining, you got band molding going across there, you've got the architectural hierarchy of windows and lower windows, pianoforte, kind of that piano noble. I'm sorry, and so
I knew what you were talking.
This organization of the house, organization of that facade is very clean. This is apparently Dutch brick that was used as ballast in a ship. We don't see that much brick there. We see a lot more this black limestone that they've got. And so, in any case, this was an example of the most architecturally significant house, and it was what's a nice way to say it? It was kind of run down. Okay, it was in terrible shape. The owner who we talked to didn't really have any money to fix it up. I mean, they had sectional. So it looks like almost the interior of a double wide in this house. And you're like, you would stand outside. That's the inside of that house, and you go, wow, that looks really cool. The beanie dude's the owner. Okay. Yeah. He looks like he owns a taco truck, right? See that wallpaper down there just above the handrail?
Yes.
It looks like that would
peeling off the walls.
Well, it was
gaudy,
really bad Victorian stuff, and yet they had the ancestral portraits
paintings
on the wall, and this was a very elevated stair. Go to the next slide.
I would love to see all of the portraits go all the way out.
That is
to Beanie Guy. Like you just got the whole wall of wigs.
That is a great Georgian staircase. Look at that carved, intermediate renewal with the Corinthian capital. Alternating balustrades between the fluted and the twists, and so there's a bunch of cool Georgian stuff going on there.
And
yet
they're
the-
all hand
yet
done,
The
like
house
you can
in
tell.
general was kind of junky. So it was. We saw that.
There he is
we
again.
saw that juxtaposition over
boy.
and over. Really cool, but kind of junky. Really cool, but kind of run down. Gosh, there's no one clean around here. I mean, it's just kind of that kind
Needs
of.
a
What's
good
your
power
thought? What do you think they do to fix that?
Well, I mean, that to me is part of that.
You calling out the government of Ireland?
Understanding the Irish story, where when the Protestants won the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, okay, they basically took over rule, okay, but it was a class division between the Protestants and the Catholics that was, bitter, okay, and so they call it the 100 Years of Peace because there was always squabbling, always rebellion, always wars, and in fact, one of the things they said about the Irish is that most of these country houses that are still owned by original families number like 8, right? There's just not very many for the hundreds that would have been built.
And this is one.
And in the 50s and 60s, these country houses were torn down by the hundreds. And you're like, gosh, why would they tear this thing down? And it's just like, well, the Catholics, the lower class, had no interest in supporting a house that represented the repression that the Protestants were put on. Like, you couldn't vote if you were Catholic.
Oh, my gosh.
The Protestant could take your horse. He only had to pay you $5. I mean, it was weird rules, but they were subjugated by the British and the Protestants in general. So there's not very many of these country houses. But anyway, long explanation.
It's not great.
This is another one. There's another really interesting feature is that in the 1820s, 1830s, a lot of these houses added castles features to their house. Now, why would
Those
they?
castellations.
Yeah.
I was watching your stories. Yeah.
So why would they do that? Why was that so important?
Sign of strength. I mean, the castles had lasted from like the
Sign
early
of,
days.
a sign of tradition.
Tradition.
A sign that our family's been here, for 1,000 years,
Right.
and that we're still here. It would have been a sign of wealth and prestige. But you'll see a house like this, like that is a federal entrance if that's in the United States. That fan light, just the leaded glass, all that is just typical, 1780s to 1820s. But in Ireland, that's much earlier. That's like
You're saying
1760s.
they added that on the castle
No.
pillars.
They added castellations to another part of this house,
okay.
and so you see very classical things. But the one thing that's cool is because those houses are so old, you see this layering of detail that you're just like, well, it was originally this style, then they added this style later, which is crazy. And here's a good
that's
example.
so cool.
This is Castle Glen. Okay, this is where we stayed for about 5 nights, and we went on all these excursions. But this house was a
That's awesome.
neoclassical house that was castellated in the 1820s.
That was not originally a
No,
castle.
that is not originally a castle.
They did a good job, right? That's cool
Well,
That looks like a-
castle. Okay, why couldn't that be a castle?
because it doesn't have an outer wall.
How would you defend that?
Right. You
Right.
need an outer wall.
Well, not only that, but you wouldn't have paned windows. You'd have arrow slots.
Oh, yeah,
You'd
you're
have-
right.
You'd have no windows on the first floor. It'd be and you'll see a picture of it coming up of an old castle. But adding windows and things like that, I mean, that's a classical house with castellation on it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh.
everything's very organized.
Dude,
though.
that's an interesting one. I never would have caught that.
Yeah.
Like you're looking for the arrow slits, not looking for windows.
Yeah.
I would have just thought it's the external feature.
But you see the turreting at the top. That would have been protection. That would have been,
it sounded like you said turding.
No, I didn't say. That would be funny if I did say
Turreting.
Anyway, but you'll see some castles and you'll see the difference between this. So this is another house that was restored. It was a complete disrepair, but this is an example of kind of a house that just recently the Irish Georgian Society restored. And let me show you inside. There is a picture of how the wall was put together.
Oh wow.
Okay, so you're solid masonry construction. What is that? 5 widths thick, right? Very thick, very beefy construction. Amazing detailing as far as how that would have been put together. But notice the floors, right? We got carpets everywhere and these pine floors all throughout these houses.
The thick boards.
Wide boards.
I like that.
Yeah. So here's an example of
Why don't people use wide boards today?
There's some
because
we get like 10 inches.
because trees aren't growing that big. We don't harvest trees like we used to harvest trees. If you look at the sawmills in California in the 1870s, 1880s, the band saws that they would use because the trees were so big, like the trees with circumference of 8 feet wide. How are you going to cut that tree? You have to have a huge bandsaw to cut these slabs out of it. We're not really cutting trees like that anymore. These trees are 3 feet to down to 1 foot, so we don't have wide boards necessarily.
Our widest now is like 10-inch floor.
Yeah,
right?
I would say
What is that one?
those are 8. That one's maybe 12. 10.
The close
but it's all driven by the size of the tree. We just don't. All our virgin forests are gone. We just don't have.
That's crazy.
Or the majority of them are gone. So here's another example, okay, of a house that just wasn't really completed very well. Those windows on the left side, and that are just kind of blocked in. This is even the castleization detailing on this thing I don't find very interesting or particularly good. And I don't think you look at this house and go, oh, look, it's a castle, right?
No.
You look at it and go, I think Austin said, looks like a White Castle restaurant. And so, it's not very good. And so, but that goes back to this same, there's a piece of the Irish architecture that we saw that was unsophisticated, right? That was just not completed. And there's not many great architects that come from Ireland. Scotland, tons of great architects. Ireland, James Hoban, who designed the White House, but that's it. And there's a White Castle.
That is so crazy.
Isn't that funny?
That's so crazy.
Anyway,
Look, there's even a spot where the awnings used to be.
Anyway, it's just the other thing that's interesting is you go back to that picture. Is that pipe running out of underneath that window going into the? These houses are so old that the plumbing, they can't run the pipes in the walls, so they actually run them outside of the house. So that's a plumbing drain pipe.
Oh, because
Going into
the
the
walls are
gutter.
all brick.
Because the walls are all solid
They
They
just
can't-
masonry.
drill
yeah.
a hole through
Yeah.
the brick and
Yeah.
So they have to run them outside.
that's crazy.
This is the inside. That's the stair hall. Clustered columns. Pretty decent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that actually looks
Gothic
kinda good.
revival detailing in there. Okay, so I did a whole talk on this recently, but that volute, okay, that's what that's called,
High
is
volute.
very different than the volutes that we use today. Now, I've shown you that whole golden rectangle.
I was gonna
and
say
all
that's
that
the
stuff.
golden ratio.
Yeah. Do you know about that, Richard?
We've talked about it on this podcast.
So that shape is a golden rectangle, and you think about the volutes that we get today that look like a cinnamon bun, right? That are just kind of grouped and kind of dropped together. This is following that classical proportion. This is a good example of the lost art of building. That shape used to be, it took a long time to figure it out. There was a lot of the pattern books spent a lot of pages describing how to make that, how to draw it, how to construct it, and that is a picture of how we used to build versus how we build today. It's all in a little volute there.
It looks really good.
It does look good. It's very pleasing, very handsome.
The Fibonacci sequence, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was a house that was really junky. It doesn't show that way in these photos. It looks really charming and interesting.
Rustic and distinguished.
But I think it's like 1850s and then 1880s. But keep going.
That couch or the single chair on the right was, the front's falling off.
Yeah. But look, one thing a reason I took a picture of this is I have a client who's got some bookshelves that he wants us to, improve. And, the way they built bookshelves then, okay, notice that you've got a pilaster on the left side. You've got it going up into a really pretty cornice that wraps around. Notice that pilaster is probably 4 or 5 inches wide, dropping down to a lower shelf that kicks out, and then you've got decorative detail in the base piece. That there is a proportion and architectural detailing that went into a bookcase, where today you just have the 2-inch little strips going between it, runs right to the ground. But there is proportional opportunity and there is trim opportunity that we missed today, and that's the reason I took a picture of that library.
Nice.
I think this is just really pretty. The proportions are really wonderful.
I see what you're saying. I was about to say, this is like really good details in a really rough house. But that's what your whole point is, right? Is
Yes,
like there's,
and you saw that over and over again.
because is that plaster siding on the things?
Plaster siding,
Plaster-
plaster wall,
No, what's the
the wainscot.
wainscot? Is that plaster or is that wood?
That is a really. Have you ever heard the stuff agrafelta?
Bless you.
Agrafelt. There is basically a Victorian pattern of embossed paper that was used. Agrafelta? I can't remember.
Is that something that you would use today?
No. And when you see it, you're like, oh, that's it looks so gaudy. It looks so, and that's what they filled in that wainscoting. And that's why you know that it's 18, Victorian, right? It's going to read as more Victorian because of details and materials like that. But that chair rail is way too high.
Or was that the same detail in the chair rail? Was the same stuff you were talking about? Okay.
Agrafelta.
Anyway, keep going. There's also things like this. You're like, wow, that is amazing ironwork, and
Look at that. With the birds
I think that's arts and crafts. I think that's Art Nouveau, maybe even a little bit.
Did they
Looks
even
like
do
a
work to
William
the-
Morris wallpaper.
Well, look at how cool the detail is on
it's
on the
etched.
wood. No, on the wood to the left.
Well, that's figured quarter sawn oak.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty. That was a trompe l'oeil. Y'all familiar with that term?
I know Donald.
Trompe l'oeil is a French word. It is TROMPELOI, I think.
Must be a cousin.
And it basically means a painting that meant to fool the eye of what it's. So you got the books. Those are all painted books.
Oh, cool.
Secret door that closes.
Did it look pretty realistic?
Yeah, if you glanced at it, you wouldn't think
notice
of it. But if you looked long, you'd saw it.
Do we think those books are all real on the wall here?
They are real.
He's had like 8 library rooms, and I'm like, what are in these books?
Yeah, no,
What
it's
do we got in these things?
amazing. All the books, a lot of stuff on gardening, a lot of stuff on philosophy, a lot of stuff on. Anyway, keep going. That was the outside of it. You can't see it, but the upper left, that cornice is basically just deteriorated and gone.
Yeah.
Okay, and so
can see
there's a bunch of stuff that you would look at, and if you look too long, you were like, oh my gosh, they've got a lot of maintenance to do on this house.
And they're not going to do it, right?
And it doesn't appear that they're going to do it. And so millions of dollars of restoration needed to restore these
Would
houses.
Ireland ever pay for some of that stuff?
Well, they've got the Irish Georgian Society, and that's gone around saving some important properties. But our guide told us at the end of the trip, he goes, why it's great that you guys seen so many of these houses is that half of them will be gone in 5 years.
Wow.
And you're just like, what? Come on.
Like they're just going to bulldoze them?
No,
they're going to fall into disrepair. They're not going to be able to pay the taxes. It's going to be going to receivership. It's just, and then get torn down. So
do you think whenever
there's another one with the broken eaves at the top and just, it's crumbling. Keep going.
So if you're a patron out there and you really want to have Irish history preserved,
if you want, your dollar to go a long way, you could buy some of these incredible properties for
nothing,
not very much.
Like Beanie Guy did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of garden gates. I'm just trying to. I just loved all the garden stuff.
So go back because this is really cool. So my friend went to Ireland before you did, so he beat you there. We were debriefing about the history of everything, and he was kind of explaining to me a lot of these old walls. Probably not unless this is part of a castle house, but a lot of the old walls were made like in the original coastal raids of Ireland, like because there were like Vikings coming through, raping, pillaging, and plundering.
Yeah.
And he was like, they would build these things. So a lot of their brickwork, it reminded me of this because they have no mortar,
Right.
or the mortar is all deteriorated,
Right.
because it's perishable. But all the bricks are just insane.
Well, I told the story before about the mortar joints and that job that was being done in Dallas, and the architects had made them change the width of the mortar. You see that over there, this 1/8-inch mortar lines that we just don't get over here.
But you could see the level of closeness that all these rocks are playing into one another, especially more at the top. The bottom looks like it's had some thicker mortar, but the top looks like it's just they went and found a rock that was going to be perfect. And
again, as a builder and as a craftsman going to these places, you just see this and you're like, I got to raise my game. I got to get better here, because the quality that they built with, really is enlightening and awesome. Keep going. So we went to the Cliffs of Moher, which is awesome. That little castle, when it was built 1820s, it was a spot that they could take their guests out there and have tea out on the cliffs.
Is this from Princess Bride, where they climbed the thing?
What is that? The
Cliffs of Insanity is what they're called. But
the Cliffs of Insanity. I don't think so.
Okay.
But anyway, it was pretty beautiful.
It is. My favorite movie. I'm so glad I got that. Oh, that's huge.
In any case,
that's cool. Yeah, there he is. Wesley.
So,
dude, why didn't y'all reenact anything while you were there? There's probably a big rope and a sword fight. Yeah.
So that was really cool. Next slide. We might do a podcast on bushcraft. Bushcraft. There you go. So what you see there is this in this. There was a whole rustic classicism movement, in the classical period, and you will see people that made little Greek temples out of timbers, and in this case they made a Gothic temple out of timbers. And so it's inventive, it's fun. I want to have this, so when a client says, what else could we do out here? You can have ideas. You can have things that are like, oh yeah, we ought to try. Hey, this would be good. This would work. So,
do you think because it's untreated, it would last less long? I guess this has been here for 100 plus years.
Well, I mean, it depends on the wood you use. I mean, if you use a little cedar tree, that thing's going to last a pretty long time.
Really?
So, yeah.
Those diamond shapes in the gable, I guess we would call it, it reminds me of like the diamond shape you would see like in leaded glass windows.
Glass, for sure. And so, those are little Gothic arches in there, so it's very appropriate to the style. And so,
one thing, look, seeing this thing here, it's like we're not going to do a bushcraft episode because all the things that you see in bushcraft are like nothing in comparison. Like they don't have any classicism. Their form, they're not, or their function, they're not form, right?
Yeah,
like this is
correct. That's exactly right.
This is another level. Like the bushcraft stuff is really cool because I think it just showcases like some guys getting out there and making some cool structures, and everything has a purpose. Survival and everything like that. Like I love it. Like those videos are really fun to watch for me. But like this is taking that and then adding it to another level. I think their first thought is like, let's build an enclosed surface that I can stay warm in for the winter.
For sure.
Instead of like, look at this. This has like some beauty to it, some lightness. It's like got the green playing into it.
Well,
like,
I mean,
that's just magic.
It's refined at the same time. It's rustic, and so it's inventive. It's creative.
It seems like Art Nouveau
charming,
almost,
right?
Art Deco. What is the one where it incorporates nature? Art Deco.
That'd be Art Nouveau.
Art Nouveau. Okay.
But no, this is it's Gothic, rustic Gothic. And so, but this is why you go, right? This is, you see things that you just don't see anywhere else.
Just magic.
A lot of gardens were very important to them. I liked this because it was a Gothic, also greenhouse, tons of greenhouses there. Gardening and the organization of gardens and how they created paths and how they created access lines and views and the order, because really what you're doing is when they're, cultivating a garden, it's just like Adam and Eve in the garden, right? They are
naked.
I'm just kidding. He said they're naked.
I heard him.
He said naked. Funny. Oh, hilarious.
So, but you see these access lines, you see this organization, and it is creating order out of chaos. And so it's very important doing that, creating these spaces, because I'm trying to have a serious conversation. I'm trying to raise the culture bar with this group, and
we're having fun.
We're having fun. Talking about naked ladies.
Architecture can be fun.
I feel like you can make a killing there as a power washer.
Yeah,
seriously. Imagine
that. You go one weekend, you clean up. Well, maybe not.
But that's part of the look, right?
Totally.
The
Is
moss.
Yeah, you wouldn't go take all that stuff off.
Go 8 slides back to the castles. Like, some of them need it. Like the one that you said was the most historically important one in the whole thing. Like that one could use it.
You're like, ma'am, I just
imagine
cleaned
what
your
it would
whole
look
sidewalk.
like cleaning up the bottom level there. Like that would look the
Okay.
They come back from work. It's all
we
power wash.
wouldn't do it with the power sprayer, okay? Let's do a cleaning agent with, in a bucket of warm water with a brush, okay?
Sorry,
yeah, sure.
I'm American.
Let's not power spray the building off. I can take care of that for you. Let me just get me a power sprayer out here. Right? Okay. We do that all the time in Texas. I mean, okay.
You said this was going to decay in 5 years? Let's make it 3.
Exactly.
But it's going to be a clean 3.
Okay, so at one of these places, they have what's called it was the largest telescope in the world for about 70 years.
Oh, wow.
Built in 1845. Okay.
Whoa.
I did not know what I was looking at. That's crazy.
That is the end of the telescope. Okay, it's been covered up with the plywood there, but that is a 70 or 80 foot long telescope.
I didn't think they were looking through plywood at the skies. It's been covered up. It's not actually using that.
This thing could actually rotates, right? And moves back and forth. And there's that little brass thing towards the front. You see that little brass plate? That's the eye that you're looking into. And this guy was one of the first ones to actually, see the galaxy, see the rotation of the galaxy. And
wait, that's the eye close up to the thing?
That is what you are seeing. Is there's a plate all the way at the bottom there, a polished piece of steel that they're looking up through a mirror down into that plate.
So it's like a periscope. The periscope, the thing in the submarines that goes.
Oh yeah.
So it's like that, but it periscopes back.
Yep. And so that thing would move around, and he had. Now it's all hydraulic and everything else, but then it was all manual, and so they had guys pulling the things over and everything else.
Do you know
for 70 years? That's the largest telescope in the world.
Do you know the magnification on it?
They call it the Leviathan.
Did they know the magnification on it?
No.
Bet the Hubble dusts it now.
I would hope. Anyway, it was.
It's like 4 times zoom.
This family still owns the same. And keep going to the next picture. So this family owns this castle. Okay. So this is called Burr Castle. Okay. Now it goes back to the 11th century. Okay. And that main body, is original, but it was turned the other way. And so the reason there's all these windows on the left and right side is because that was added later. But that centerpiece without the stairs was also part of the original structure. So, you begin to see some of these things.
How did they turn it around?
They didn't pick up the stone and turn it around. They just took the 2 facades and said, "This is going to be our front
is the back now."
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
This is the back now.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
that's inside it, and look how beefy and huge that staircase is.
Okay, I'm seeing a trend of the staircase bottoms popping through the floor.
Yeah. So what you have is you have a timber framed. See that thing right there?
It's like balloon frame.
That thing, the black thing.
Yeah.
The bottom skirt and the top thing would have been structural members that would have gone up and tied into a post.
Yeah.
And mortise and tenon into a post, so they would have built the whole thing up. And those finials are those post things coming down.
I gotcha.
And they didn't cut them off. Sometimes they turned them like this. They made them decorative features.
That makes perfect sense.
But you see them all the way up through there.
Wow, that is so cool. Look at the detail. Richard,
Wow.
could you do that?
That's obviously
still
this
wanna
is
show
heavily
off.
Gothic, right? This is Gothic, ceiling. Go to the next one. And there's another Gothic ceiling, right?
Coffered ceiling is a word.
It's a strap work plaster ceiling, Jackson.
You just seem like you're struggling
With
for the word.
such
I was
authority.
Like, I think it.
There's another wood case with some iron on the outside, another wood lock.
That one looks really cool. That
Yeah.
wood casing. That's
No, they're
crazy.
awesome. Anyway, high Gothic revival house, really amazing.
This one is one of the nicer ones you saw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one's
And it's
crazy.
very well taken care of, very well restored, original family. But this is the old gatehouse that you would actually get in.
Oh
and
my
they're
gosh.
and they're they've got some windows up there,
arrow
but you see
slats.
the arrow slits there. They've
Yeah.
turned into windows.
Mm-hmm.
That's how those things were defended. That's what an early castle wall would look like.
Would there have been a wall like coming out of that? Mm-hmm. Do you think they took it down just because?
I don't know. It's hard to.
I would ask
hard to
that if
know.
I was there.
Next time you go on your dollar, you can ask.
Can't wait.
I'm showing this because there's a couple more pictures in here where I saw some of the earliest glass work I've ever seen. Remember
Really?
talked about crown glass? It was spun around.
Yeah.
There's actually pieces of crown glass in this window, and you can see it
Whoa.
right
Oh, yeah.
up there to the top.
Holy
See the
moly.
So that means that through centrifugal force, that glass was thrown out. That's why it has those kind of round
Yeah.
striations in them.
Wow.
Also, the other thing that's fascinating is that this
big.
door was added later. Look what they did.
They just cut the door.
They cut the door basically almost that middle panel. They cut it in half. There's no bottom rail on that door.
That's
Isn't
wild.
that wild?
That's the old home supply special. You just make it work.
Because that's a 1890s Victorian door that's just bottom half of it just cut off. 'Cause
What
they
in the
adapted it to that opening.
So when you're
was no
reaching, are
opening
you
there.
reaching like this?
Yes.
To get to the door.
Yeah. I mean,
So with that, you're-
handle's 18 inches off the ground.
So that thing should be rotting out, right? With all the
Yeah, I would
moisture.
think, yeah.
soaking
Look
up.
at, you can see even through the paint, like it's still rotting out.
Yeah.
Like you can just see how it's breaking apart. Well, the other question, or the reason they probably did it is to preserve that glass, right? Like they're like, oh, cool, look at this glass
Well,
work.
I had some other pictures of it, but
That's crazy.
but the front side of this is a different castle, not the Castle
Yeah.
Burr. It's a different castle. It also goes back. This is the one. So, Guinness beer.
Mm-hmm.
The Guinness family are great preservationists in Ireland.
Really?
And so this was one of the sons of the Guinness family restored this castle. And Desmond Guinness, I think is his name.
Did a bang up
And
job.
so, yeah, he did an amazing job. But we should have named you Desmond. That's a good Irish name.
I sure would have been bullied.
Anyway, yeah, and
Oh,
then
that's cool.
all these garden gates.
looks
They
really
just
cool.
it was
The garden environments are really neat.
yeah, they're really neat.
With all the vines
yeah,
growing over
it
everything.
just they have this. There's order, right? There's this order and proportion, but then it's juxtaposed with this, wild vines and everything else.
Yeah.
growing up.
It
It's
feels
really
kind of Narnia-ish,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's a whole hidden land out there.
awesome. Yeah. So
That's cool.
I guess I look at I come away from it feeling like I understand Irish architecture better, feel like I understand the Irish culture better, feeling like I've improved or I've been inspired with craftsmanship. And so it's been years since I went on a trip and traveled for inspiration and stuff. And I'm just, I've said it again and again, it's just travel's so important to being a master builder, to raising your game. Richard, if you went there, you'd have just been staring at trim the whole time.
Yeah, I was looking at the crown and stuff.
I didn't show it in these things. I didn't share them, but I'm going to do a video on my YouTube thing about jib doors. So jib door is a hidden door in a wall.
Oh yeah, I saw that story.
And so they've got this one castle had like 5 jib doors, and you wouldn't have known any of them were there.
Really?
It was just
That's
like,
crazy.
Dang. Because the effort they went to hide that those library books, like they created false library books with leather bound things that were just a facade and were only about an inch thick, and you're just like, oh, that's how you do it. You really do go to that effort. You really do,
Wow.
You're just like, there's just all these things you just see, and you're just like, okay, we could be doing better. We could be doing more.
Mm-hmm. So it lit a fire.
It just
because you did a jib door for your parents' house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't great. Just kidding. Just kidding. It was actually awesome. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, what?
Yeah. I think we had a hidden catch, and we've done some catches where you had to hit a dial or punch in enough from Snake's Head. We did that.
Whoa.
I helped with that one.
That is cool.
What was I going to say?
They don't use it anymore.
Anyway, it's a powerful trip, and I'm resolving myself saying I'm going to do more of these because they're just so inspiring.
Yeah. That's really neat. That's super special. With your trip, you actually went. Where'd you guys go? What cities did y'all go to?
Well, we went southwest, so we were down in Limerick.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say that in an Irish accent?
I don't think I can. You did a good job.
Shannon is on the west coast, and that's Shannon Airport. And then we went south of there. Castle Glen was south of there, and then the golf courses we played were south of there. And then we went up to Dublin. We were there for about 5 days.
Say that one.
You said that one. Went up to Dublin for 3 days to finish the trip, and that was really great.
Nice. My friend, I don't know where he went. Shout out Ben, but he was a lot more coastal, and so I'm sure you were coastal as well. So it's hard not to be in Ireland. But just a lot of the different ones that he showed, a lot of the different photos he showed me, like everywhere you looked over these like countrysides, it was like stone structure, just like every 300, 400 yards, it was like, there's another one. There's another one.
The other thing that doesn't come through on these pictures is how rural and how poor Ireland is.
Yeah.
I mean, if the U.S. does $30 trillion in GDP, and, of the top 30 countries in the world, by GDP, Ireland's, 26. Okay, they're near Brussels, and they're near their GDP was 504 billion. Okay, I mean Texas probably has a GDP about that. Okay, so Texas could have more than that, right? And so I asked, what's the industry here, and there's like dairy, but it's like they have no natural resources, they have no right, and so everything. Cows and sheep are everywhere. They are very well educated. So there is a big,
schooling.
Yeah, but technology, like Apple's there, and a bunch of different companies are there because Irish students are very well educated, but they don't have anywhere to go. But I was saying that because driving around, all you see is these small little houses that people live in, and they're not much to look at, right? It's just like, I guess you just don't have much money here because you don't see, gated neighborhoods, right? You don't see these things, and it's just, again, you get this by traveling. You understand the culture better, and you understand these things better. So, anyway, it was all good.
Yeah, I was fascinated by it, but it's really interesting. Like he was saying, everyone there was also really personable too, because you'd go into like a pub and they'd be like, "Oh, hello there."
Yeah, no, they like Americans.
Yeah.
So
neat,
good.
Well, super cool. Thank you guys for watching this episode. Hopefully that inspires you guys to take a mini grand tour of your own. I guess it's not a grand tour.
Just travel.
Mini tour. Just a tour. Just travel.
Just travel.
Well said, Richard.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.